Sweat beaded on Aisha Coleman's brow as she navigated Dawson Regional Airport's chaos at 7 a.m., her sleek blazer masking her role as Horizon Airways Senior VP. Officer Dale Hargrove, a towering cop with a chilling stare, halted her, barking about a security threat. She flashed her airline ID, expecting deference. Instead, he smirked, ripped it to shreds, and slapped cuffs on her wrists as travelers gawked. Whispers of a cover-up swirled, her arrest a spark for chaos to come. What had she stumbled into? Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice against corruption, hit like and subscribe for more gripping tales exposing the truth. Aisha Coleman sat in a dim, windowless holding room at Dawson Regional Airport, the cold metal chair biting into her thighs as her wrists throbbed beneath tight handcuffs, the skin already raw and chafed from Officer Dale Hargrove's rough grip. The air stank of stale coffee and sweat, a flickering bulb overhead casting jagged shadows across the cracked concrete walls, amplifying the suffocating silence broken only by the occasional crackle of a radio somewhere down the hall. She'd been dragged here minutes ago, her tailored blazer wrinkled and one sleeve torn from the scuffle. Her dignity stripped as travelers outside had filmed her being hauled away like some common thief. Now, Hargrove loomed across the scratched steel table, his bulk filling the doorway before he stepped in, shutting it with a clang that echoed in her ears. His uniform stretched tight over his broad chest, the badge pinned to it glinting faintly, a symbol she'd once trusted but now saw as a mockery. He leaned in close, his breath hot and sour with tobacco, eyes narrowing as he sneered. "That little card you waved around? Fake. I don't care who you think you are, lady. You're not fooling me with that uppity act." His voice was a low growl, thick with disdain, the word uppity landing like a slap, a coded jab at her race she'd heard too many times before. Aisha's pulse quickened, but she forced her spine straight, meeting his glare with a steely resolve honed over years climbing Horizon Airways ranks to Senior VP. She knew his type, had heard whispers from gate agents about an airport cop who loved flexing power over black folks, though she'd never imagined she'd be his target. "Check my credentials," she said, her tone clipped and professional, refusing to let him see the tremor in her chest. "I'm Aisha Coleman, Senior Vice President at Horizon Airways. Protocol says you verify before detaining. Do your job." Her words hung sharp in the air, a challenge she hoped would pierce his bravado, but Hargrove's lips curled into a sneer, his meaty fist slamming the table so hard the metal groaned, sending a jolt through her bones. "Resisting arrest now, huh?" he snapped, his accusation baseless yet delivered with a conviction that made her stomach twist. "You don't tell me how to do my job, girl. I say you're a threat. You're a threat." The venom in his tone was personal, a hatred she felt, in her marrow, rooted not in evidence but in the color of her skin. The confidence in her stride he'd clocked the moment she'd stepped into his territory. She opened her mouth to argue again, citing Section 12 of the airport security manual she'd helped draft, when a younger officer slipped in, barely 25, his freckled face flushed with uncertainty as he clutched a clipboard. "Sir, maybe we should run her name," he mumbled, avoiding Hargrove's glare, his voice a thin thread of reason in the room's thickening tension. Aisha seized the opening, leaning forward despite the cuffs digging deeper, her words steady as she repeated her title and employee ID number, 84297, praying this kid had enough sense to check the system. Hargrove's jaw tightened, his thick neck reddening as he shot the junior officer a look that could have shattered glass, but the kid hesitated, glancing between them like a deer caught in headlights. For a fleeting second, Aisha thought she'd cracked through, that logic might prevail over prejudice, her chest loosening as the young officer scribbled something on his pad. She imagined him punching her name into the database, seeing her photo pop up next to Senior VP, forcing Hargrove to eat his words. But then Hargrove snatched the radio from his belt, his meaty thumb jamming the button as he barked into it. "Unit 3, Unit 5, we've got a hostile detainee. Possible escalation. Need backup now." His eyes locked on hers, a glint of triumph flickering in them as he lowered the device, his smirk widening into something feral. Aisha's breath caught, her brief hope snuffed out like a candle in a storm, the room shrinking as the weight of his power pressed down on her. She'd thought she could reason her way out, that her status would shield her. But Hargrove wasn't playing by rules. he was writing his own, fueled by a bigotry she couldn't negotiate with. The door burst open seconds later, and 2 more officers stormed in, their boots pounding the floor, hands on holsters, faces hard and unyielding. One was wiry with a buzz cut and a scar slicing his cheek, the other stocky, his bald head gleaming, under the light, both moving with a precision that told her this wasn't their first rodeo. "On your feet!" the wiry one shouted, yanking her up by the arm so fast her chair screeched back, toppling over with a crash that rang in her ears. The stocky one drew his gun, a sleek black pistol aimed square at her chest, his finger hovering near the trigger as he growled, "Hands where I can see 'em now." Aisha's heart slammed against her ribs, her mind racing as she raised her bound hands, the cuffs clinking faintly, her voice lost in the sudden roar of adrenaline flooding her system. The junior officer stepped back, clipboard falling to the floor with a dull thud, his eyes wide with panic as he muttered, "Wait, I didn't mean..." But Hargrove cut him off with a sharp grunt. "She's dangerous, rookie, you'll learn. Dangerous." The word hit her like a brick, twisting her reality upside down. A 42-year-old executive in a blazer now branded a terrorist in the span of minutes, all because she'd dared to exist in Hargrove's crosshairs. The room spun as the wiry officer shoved her against the wall, her cheek pressing into the rough concrete, the cold seeping through her clothes while the stocky one kept his gun trained on her back, its barrel a silent threat she could feel without seeing. Hargrove loomed closer, his shadow swallowing the light, his voice a low hiss as he muttered, "You think you're smart, huh? We'll see how smart you are when we're done." Her knees buckled slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of disbelief. Her mind scrambling to process how a routine audit had spiraled into this nightmare. She'd walked into Dawson Regional that morning to observe check-in lines, to sip coffee and jot notes about efficiency, not to be cuffed and cornered like prey. Yet here she was, surrounded, outnumbered, the air thick with the stench of their sweat and her own rising fury. She clung to a shred of logic, telling herself they'd have to check her ID eventually, that Horizon's system would flag her absence, that someone would notice a senior VP had vanished from the grid. But as the wiry officer tightened his grip, twisting her arm until a sharp pain shot through her shoulder and the stocky one clicked the safety off his gun, a chilling realization sank in. Hargrove didn't care about proof. He cared about power, and he'd already decided she was guilty of something far worse than any crime, guilty of being black and unafraid in his presence. The junior officer hovered near the door, his freckles stark against his paling skin, mouthing something she couldn't hear over the pounding in her ears, his hesitation a faint flicker of humanity drowned by Hargrove's command. The radio crackled again, a dispatcher's voice confirming backup was in position, and Aisha's stomach dropped as she heard the distant thud of more boots approaching, a small army summoned to crush her under the weight of a lie. She'd tried to stand her ground, to wield her title like a shield, but Hargrove had turned it into a target, and now she was trapped, the room a cage, the officers a pack closing in. The climax hit like a thunderclap when the door swung wide again, revealing 4 more figures in tactical vests, their guns drawn and faces blank with purpose, transforming the holding room into a war zone where she was the sole enemy, her every breath a defiance they were determined to snuff out. Aisha Coleman's cheek stung from the rough concrete wall as the tactical officers loomed in the holding room, their guns glinting under Dawson Regional Airport's flickering lights, her wrists still screaming from the cuffs that bit deeper with every twitch. The air was thick with tension, a sour mix of gun oil and Hargrove's smug satisfaction, his hulking frame blocking the exit as he watched her like a hawk eyeing a wounded bird. She'd been pinned there, heart hammering, mind racing for an out, when a sharp voice cut through the chaos. "Wait, that's Ms. Coleman." It was Tasha Reynolds, a wiry Horizon Gate agent with braids pulled tight, shoving past the junior officer, her eyes wide with recognition as she clutched a tablet, streaming passenger manifests. Aisha's chest heaved with a flicker of relief, Tasha's familiar face a lifeline in this nightmare. Her 5 years at the ticket counter, making her a quiet legend among staff who knew her knack for spotting VIPs. "She's senior VP. I've checked her in a dozen times," Tasha insisted, jabbing a finger at the screen, her voice trembling but firm as she faced Hargrove's scowl. The big cop's smirk faltered, his thick fingers flexing as if itching to snatch the tablet, but Tasha held her ground, swiping to Aisha's profile, photo and title glowing in bold. Senior Vice President, Horizon Airways. The room shifted, the tactical officers exchanging uneasy glances, their barrels dipping slightly, the wiry one muttering, "Could be a mix-up," while the stocky one holstered his gun with a grunt, his bald head beating with sweat. Hargrove's neck flushed a deep crimson, his jaw working like he was chewing gravel. But the evidence was undeniable, Tasha's quick thinking peeling back his lie one pixel at a time. "Fine," he spat, yanking the keys from his belt with a jangle that echoed off the walls. "Uncuff her, but this ain't over." The junior officer fumbled forward, his freckled hands shaking as he unlocked the cuffs, the metal clanking to the floor, leaving Aisha's wrists bruised and free. Her skin prickling as blood rushed back. She rubbed them, standing tall despite the ache in her shoulder, her blazer hanging lopsided from the earlier shove. Her gaze locked on Hargrove as he loomed closer, his breath hot on her face. "You think you're slick, huh?" he whispered, low enough the others couldn't hear, his voice a venomous hiss dripping with hate. "Call yourself whatever you want, girl, you'll regret crossing me." The slur slipped out, sharp and deliberate, a dagger aimed at her soul, and Aisha's stomach twisted, not from fear, but from a fury she swallowed down, knowing this wasn't the place to unleash it. He stepped back, smirking like he'd won, some secret round, letting her pass as Tasha guided her out. The gate agent's arm a steady anchor through the haze of adrenaline. Aisha grabbed her torn briefcase from the floor, her heels clicking on the tile as she left the holding room, the tactical officers parting like a reluctant sea, their radios buzzing with static she ignored. She made it to the gate, boarding, pass clutched tight, the jetway a tunnel to temporary escape, her flight to LAX a lifeline she clung to as she sank into her seat, the hum of engines drowning out the chaos she'd left behind. She thought she'd won, that Hargrove's retreat was her victory, her hand steadying as she pulled out her phone, texting Marcus Tate, her deputy at Horizon. "Dig into Officer Dale Hargrove, Dawson Regional, now." Her fingers flew over, the screen, detailing the arrest, the slur, the backup. Her mind already plotting to bury Hargrove in complaints, to make him a footnote in her rear view. The plane taxied, lifting off into the Texas sky, and Aisha exhaled, the altitude soothing. Her frayed nerves, her blazer's torn sleeve a badge of survival she'd wear proudly. She sipped a water from the tray, replaying Tasha's save, convincing herself the worst was over, that Hargrove's bluff had been called, his power checked by a gate agent's grit. But mid-flight, her phone pinged despite the altitude. A glitch. She didn't question as an anonymous number flashed. "Hargrove's got friends in high places. Watch your back." Her throat tightened, the words a cold splash on her fleeting triumph, her eyes darting to the clouds outside, suddenly ominous, the message hinting at a web she'd barely glimpsed. She deleted it, hands trembling, telling herself it was a prank, a scare tactic from a beaten man. But doubt gnawed at her gut, the victory slipping through her fingers like sand. She landed at LAX 4 hours later, the California sun blinding as she stepped off the plane, her blazer patched with a safety pin from a flight attendant, her stride purposeful despite the ache in her bones. She scanned the terminal, expecting, calm, a chance to regroup, to call Marcus and plan their next move, her mind buzzing with strategies to expose Hargrove's record. But then she saw them, a new squad of airport security, 6 strong, weaving through the crowd, their vests marked, with LAX insignia, eyes locked on her like hawks on a field mouse. Leading them was a lean man, Officer Trent Voss, his face carved with a smirk that mirrored Hargrove's, his hand resting on his baton as he barked, "Aisha Coleman, stop right there!" Her heart sank, legs freezing mid-step, the anonymous text roaring back to life in her mind as Voss closed in, his voice booming over the terminal's din. "You're under arrest for assaulting an officer at Dawson Regional." Assault? The lie hit her like a freight train. Her victory shredded in an instant, travelers gawking as phones came out filming her again, the cuffs in Voss's hand glinting like a promise of worse to come. She reached for her Horizon ID, flashing it, instinctively her voice steady despite the panic clawing her chest. "I'm Senior VP, this is a mistake." But Voss laughed, a harsh bark that echoed off the glass walls. "Tell it to the judge, lady, we've got witnesses." Witnesses. Her mind spun. Hargrove's whisper replaying. "You'll regret this." And she realized he'd never back down. He'd just passed the torch, his revenge igniting a fire she couldn't outrun. The squad surrounded her, Voss snapping the cuffs on with a click that drowned out the terminal's noise, her wrists throbbing anew as they tightened. The crowd's murmurs a dull roar in her ears. She'd thought she'd escaped, that Tasha's stand had sealed her freedom, but Hargrove's reach stretched beyond Dawson, his allies waiting to pounce, turning her flight into a trap she'd walked right into. Hey folks, what do you think? Should Aisha have fought harder back at Dawson, or was she right to play it cool? Comment number 1. If you think she should have taken Hargrove down then and there, hit like if you're raging at this injustice, and subscribe to catch how she battles back. Imagine you're in her shoes, facing a system stacked against you. Would you trust anyone after this? Now, how deep does Hargrove's web go? And what's Voss got planned next? Aisha Coleman's wrists ached as Officer Trent Voss snapped the cuffs tight in LAX's bustling terminal. The California sun streaming through towering glass walls, doing nothing to warm the chill sinking into her bones. Her torn blazer flapping, like a flag of defeat as travelers gawked and filmed her second arrest in a day. The squad of 6 security officers flanked her, their vests crisp and badges gleaming, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling in her mind. Voss's smirk a mirror of Hargrove's as he towered over her, his lean frame coiled with menace, his baton tapping his palm like a metronome counting down her doom. "Assaulting an officer at Dawson Regional," he repeated, voice loud enough to turn heads, his words a twisted echo of Hargrove's lie, each syllable dripping with mockery as he ignored her Horizon Airways ID still clutched in her trembling hand. She'd flashed it again, her voice cutting through the terminal's hum. "I'm Aisha Coleman, Senior VP. Check my credentials. This is fabricated." But Voss barked a laugh, harsh and grating, his hazel eyes glinting with disdain as he snatched the ID and tossed it to the floor, grinding it under his boot with a crunch that made her flinch. "Doesn't matter here, sweetheart," he said, the casual venom in his tone slicing deeper than the cuffs, a racial edge she felt in her gut. His refusal to acknowledge her rank, a deliberate erasure of her power. The other officers tightened. Their circle, a wall of muscle and Kevlar, one with a shaved head and a tattoo creeping up his neck, muttering, "She looks guilty to me," while another, a stocky woman with a buzz cut, nodded, her hand resting on her taser like it was itching to fire. Aisha's heart pounded, her breath shallow as she scanned for an escape, the terminal's bright lights blurring into a kaleidoscope of panic. Her earlier victory at Dawson now a cruel joke as Hargrove's reach stretched across states, his allies primed to bury her. Voss grabbed her arm, yanking her forward so hard her shoulder popped, the pain a white-hot spike as he barked, "Move it!" Steering her through the crowd, travelers parting with murmurs of confusion and fear, their phones a sea of lenses capturing her humiliation. She stumbled, heels skidding on the polished floor, her briefcase long gone, left behind in Dawson's holding room, her only lifeline now the phone in her pocket she couldn't reach. "You've got no evidence," she snapped, twisting to face Voss, her voice steady despite the tremor in her legs. But he smirked wider, leaning close enough she could smell the mint gum on his breath. "Oh, we've got plenty," courtesy of Hargrove. Her stomach dropped, the anonymous text flashing in her mind. Friends in high places. And she realized this wasn't random. It was a setup. A baton passed from one racist cop to another. Her flight to LAX not an escape, but a trap snapping shut. The squad hustled her past the gates, the din of announcements and rolling suitcases fading as they veered toward an unmarked exit. A gray steel door slamming open to reveal a parking lot baked in 90-degree heat. The asphalt shimmering like a mirage. A black van idled there, its tinted windows swallowing the light, exhaust curling into the air like a warning she couldn't heed. Voss shoved her forward, the tattooed officer ripping her phone from her pocket with a grunt. "No calls for you," as he crushed it under his heel, the crack of plastic a gunshot in her ears, severing her last link to Marcus, to Horizon, to hope. She twisted, shouting, "This is illegal, you can't do this." But the buzz-cut woman smirked. "Tell it to the wind," and shoved her into the van's open side, the interior dark and reeking of mildew, a metal bench bolted to the floor, her only seat as the door slammed shut with a clang that rattled her teeth. Voss climbed in front, barking orders to the driver, a wiry man with a ponytail who didn't glance back, while the others piled into a second vehicle, engines roaring to life in unison. Aisha's mind raced, piecing it together. Hargroves, whisper, "You'll regret this." Now a prophecy unfolding. His assault claim a fabricated grenade lobbed across state lines, and Voss his eager executioner. She overheard him on the radio, his voice crackling through static. "Hargrove, she's ours now. We'll teach her a lesson she won't forget." And Hargrove's reply, faint but unmistakable, "Make it stick, Trent." Her blood ran cold, the cuffs cutting deeper as she tugged against them, the van lurching forward, tires screeching as it peeled out of the lot, the terminal shrinking in the rear view she couldn't see. She'd thought Dawson was the battlefield, that boarding her flight had been her win. But this was war, a coordinated strike she hadn't seen coming, her title meaningless against a brotherhood of badges bent on breaking her. The van jolted, over potholes, each bump jarring her bruised body, her mind scrambling for a plan, a way to turn this ambush into a fight she could survive. She spotted a loose bolt on the bench, a tiny flaw in their cage, her fingers inching toward it as Voss laughed up front, oblivious, his arrogance a crack she might pry open. But then the van swerved hard, pulling into a shadowed alley miles from LAX, the engine cutting off with a shudder that matched her pulse, and Voss turned, his smirk gone, replaced by a cold, predatory stare that promised pain. "End of the line," he said, cracking his knuckles, the words a guillotine dropping as the side door slid open, revealing a chain-link fence and a squat, unmarked building, its windows boarded, its purpose a mystery she didn't want to solve. The tattooed officer yanked her out, her feet hitting gravel as the buzz-cut woman flanked her, their grips iron as they marched her toward the structure, Voss leading the way, his baton now drawn, tapping a rhythm of dread. Aisha's chest tightened, her victory at Dawson a distant memory, Hargrove's revenge a living thing dragging her into the dark. And she knew whatever waited inside was worse than cuffs, worse than lies, a lesson carved in brutality she'd have to outsmart to see daylight. Again, Aisha Coleman's sneakers crunched on gravel as Officer Trent Voss and his crew shoved her through the rusted door of a squat, windowless building, the air inside hitting her like a damp fist, thick with mold and the faint tang of bleach, her cuffs clinking as she stumbled into darkness miles from LAX's gleaming terminal. The door slammed shut behind her, a hollow boom that swallowed the last shred of daylight, leaving her blinking against the gloom, her blazer soaked with sweat from the 90-degree alley heat now clinging to her like a second skin. Voss's lean silhouette loomed ahead, his baton dangling from his hand as he flicked on a single bulb, its weak yellow glow revealing cracked concrete walls and a metal chair bolted to the floor. A scene ripped from a nightmare she couldn't wake from. She hit the ground hard as the tattooed officer kicked her legs out, her knees slamming into the gritty surface, pain flaring up her thighs as the buzz-cut woman yanked her head back by the hair, forcing her to face Voss, his smirk a jagged slash in the dim light. "Welcome to your new digs," he sneered, circling her like a vulture, his voice laced with a glee that made her skin crawl. "Hargrove says you're a smuggler, and we've got the stash to prove it." Her stomach lurched, the lie so absurd it stole her breath. But before she could protest, the tattooed officer dumped a duffel bag at her feet, unzipping it to reveal plastic-wrapped bricks of white powder, the kind of haul that'd land her in prison for decades. "That's not mine," she spat, twisting against the cuffs, her voice raw with fury as she glared at Voss. "You planted it. You're framing me." He laughed, a dry, rattling sound that bounced off the walls, his hazel eyes glinting with malice as he crouched low, his face inches from hers. "Prove it, princess. No one's coming for you." The words landed like a punch, her mind reeling as she realized Hargrove's lesson wasn't just humiliation, it was annihilation, a setup so tight it'd bury her under a mountain of false charges. She demanded a lawyer, her tone sharp, despite the tremble in her chest. "I've got rights, you can't hold me without counsel." But the buzz-cut woman smirked, cracking her knuckles. "Rights? Out here, we're the law," while the tattooed officer kicked the chair closer, its legs screeching against the floor like a warning. Voss straightened, gesturing to a corner where a dusty security camera hung, its red light blinking steadily. "Smile, Coleman. You're on tape confessing." "Confessing?" Her pulse spiked, her eyes darting to the lens, understanding crashing over her like a wave. They'd edit this, twist her every word into a guilty plea, her career, her life, shredded by a lie she couldn't unstick. The room spun, her bruised knees throbbing as she weighed her odds, outnumbered, outgunned, her phone a pile of plastic back at LAX, Marcus miles away with no clue where she'd vanished. But then she caught it, a flicker of desperation in Voss's eyes, a twitch that said he needed her broken fast, and she seized it, her mind racing for a play. "You're sloppy," she said, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "Horizon tracks. It's execs. They'll know I'm missing by now." Voss's smirk faltered just for a split second, but it was enough. A crack in his armor she could widen. She slumped suddenly, letting her body go limp, her head lolling forward as she gasped. "Can't breathe!" The buzzcut woman loosened her grip, startled, while the tattooed officer stepped back, muttering, "What the hell?" Voss barked, "Get up, you're faking." But Aisha doubled over, wheezing, her act so convincing her own chest tightened, years of boardroom poise now a weapon in this grimy cell. "She needs a medic," the buzzcut woman said, voice tight with uncertainty, and Voss cursed, slamming his baton against the wall, the crack echoing as he radioed, "Get the nurse." Now, minutes crawled by, Aisha's breath shallow and staged, her eyes half open, tracking their panic as the door creaked open again. A wiry woman in scrubs rushing in, her gray hair pulled into a messy bun, a stethoscope bouncing against her chest. "Move!" the nurse snapped, kneeling beside Aisha, her hands cool and steady as she checked her pulse, Voss hovering like a storm cloud, his impatience a palpable heat. Aisha kept up the charade, her groans soft but urgent, until the nurse leaned close, slipping a folded note into her palm, her whisper barely audible. "They're lying about you." The words jolted her, a lifeline she clutched as the nurse stood declaring, "She needs air, get her to the supply room." Voss grunted, reluctant, but waved the tattooed officer to haul her up, his grip bruising her arm as he dragged her down a narrow hall, the buzzcut woman trailing behind, her taser still drawn. The supply room was a cluttered cave, shelves sagging, with boxes, a single vent humming in the ceiling, and Aisha spotted her chance. A rolling cart piled with linens, its wheels wobbling but functional. The nurse lingered, pretending to adjust her bag, blocking Voss's view as Aisha lunged, shoving herself into the cart's lower shelf, curling tight as the nurse draped a sheet over her, muttering, "Go now." The tattooed officer turned, distracted by Voss's shout. Where'd she go? And Aisha held her breath, the cart lurching as the nurse pushed it toward the hall, past the cell, past the camera, her heart slamming against her ribs as she tasted freedom. The nurse wheeled her through a back exit, the alley's heat blasting her face as the sheet lifted, and Aisha rolled out, scrambling to her feet, the gravel biting her palms as she bolted, her blazer flapping, her lungs burning with the promise of escape. She'd outsmarted them, turned their trap into a getaway. The nurse's note crumpled in her fist, her mind screaming victory as she darted between rusted dumpsters, the building shrinking behind her. She thought she'd won. That. Hargrove's plan had crumbled, her legs pumping toward a gas station's neon glow a quarter-mile away, safety so close she could taste it. But then a shadow loomed ahead, a hulking figure stepping from the alley's mouth, gun raised, its barrel catching the streetlight's glare, and Hargrove's voice rasped through the night. "Going somewhere, Coleman?" Her knees locked, breath freezing in her chest as he grinned, his uniform pristine despite the dust, his presence impossible yet real. A hunter who'd tracked her every move, his finger tightening on the trigger as her escape crashed into a wall of his unrelenting hate. Aisha Coleman's lungs burned as she bolted from Officer Dale Hargrove's shadow, his gun gleaming in the alley's dim streetlight, the gravel crunching under her sneakers as she veered left, her torn blazer flapping like a tattered cape, the 90-degree night air a furnace against her sweat-slick skin miles from LAX's safety. Hargrove's shout, "Stop or I'll drop you," sliced through the dark, followed by a crack as his first shot rang out, the bullet whizzing past her ear, grazing her arm with a sting that drew a hiss from her gritted teeth, blood trickling, warm down her elbow. She didn't stop, her legs pumping faster, adrenaline drowning the pain as she darted between rusted dumpsters, their sour stench mingling with the metallic tang in her mouth. her mind a blur of survival as Hargrove's boots pounded behind her, his hulking frame closing in, a predator fueled by rage and hate. She'd thought the supply cart was her ticket out, the nurse's note her salvation. But Hargrove's presence shattered that, his voice a growl through the night. "You don't run from me, girl." The slur a whip crack she felt in her spine. Proof this wasn't just duty, it was personal. A vendetta rooted in her skin and her defiance. She zigzagged, ducking under a sagging chain-link fence, the jagged edges snagging her blazer, ripping it further as she stumbled into a sprawling warehouse lot, its looming silhouette a maze of crates and shadows under a moonless sky. Her arm throbbed, the graze a shallow slash she ignored, spotting a stack of splintered pallets and diving behind it, her chest heaving as she pressed herself flat, the rough wood scraping her palms raw. Hargrove's footsteps slowed, his labored breathing audible as he swept his flashlight's beam across the lot, the light dancing inches from her hiding spot, her pulse a drumbeat in her ears as she clamped a hand over her mouth, stifling every gasp. She ripped a strip from her blazer's sleeve, wrapping it tight around her bleeding arm, the fabric soaking crimson as she tied it off, her fingers trembling but steady. Years of crisis management at Horizon Airways now a lifeline in this deadly game. His radio crackled. "Units, converge on East Lot," and Aisha's gut twisted, realizing he wasn't alone, his call summoning more hunters to the chase. But for a moment, he paused, muttering slurs under his breath. "Nowhere to hide. You're done." His confidence a blade she vowed to blunt. She thought she'd lost him. The beam swinging away, his boots crunching toward a loading dock 50 feet off. And she exhaled, creeping from her cover, her eyes locked on a hulking warehouse ahead, its broken windows a promise of shelter. She slipped inside, the air cooler, heavy with dust and oil, her sneakers silent on the concrete as she wove through rows of abandoned machinery, their rusted hulks towering like silent sentinels, her mind screaming she'd made it, that Hargrove's chase had faltered. But then a roar erupted outside, floodlights snapping on with a blinding glare, bathing the lot in white, and Aisha froze, peering through a cracked pane to see Hargrove surrounded by a dozen figures, their camo vests and rifles glinting. A militia. He'd rallied, their faces twisted with glee as they shouted slurs into the night. "Flush her out, burn her down!" Her stomach plummeted. This wasn't just a cop, it was a warlord. His hatred a beacon drawing these thugs, their voices a chorus of venom she'd never outshout. Flames licked up as they tossed Molotovs, glass shattering against the warehouse walls, fire racing along the edges, the heat hitting her face as she backed away, smoke curling thick and black, stinging her eyes. She sprinted deeper, coughing, her arm pulsing with every step, spotting a rusted fire escape clinging to the far wall, its ladder dangling 10 feet up, a leap she'd have to make. She climbed a crumbling crate, her muscles screaming as she jumped, fingers wrapping around the lowest rung, the metal groaning under her weight as she hauled herself up, the blaze below crackling louder, a beast devouring her sanctuary. She reached the roof, collapsing onto gravel-strewn tar, gasping as sirens wailed in the distance, her chest heaving with the belief she'd outrun them. The militia's shouts fading into the smoke, her bloodied arm a badge of her grit. She'd turned their trap into a gauntlet, survived Hargrove's bullets and his fire, the night sky above a fleeting reprieve as she sucked in air, her mind racing to the gas station she'd glimpsed, a half-mile off, her next shot at freedom. But then a thunderous chop broke the silence, a helicopter roaring overhead, its spotlight pinning her like a moth, the downdraft whipping her hair as Hargrove's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Thought you'd slip me, Coleman? My boys fly too." Her heart sank, the roof trembling as the chopper hovered, ropes dropping as militiamen rappelled down, their boots thudding around her, rifles raised, a net she couldn't escape. Hargrove's grin visible in the cockpit, his empire of hate raining down from the sky. All right, folks, can you believe Aisha's fight just keeps getting tougher? Comment number 1 if you think she's got the guts to outsmart this militia. Hit like if Hargrove's cruelty's got you boiling, and subscribe to see if she breaks free. Picture yourself cornered on that roof, flames below, chopper above. What's your move? Now with Hargrove's air support locking her in, how's she dodging this death trap next? Aisha Coleman's chest heaved as the helicopter's spotlight pinned her to the warehouse roof, the gravel biting into her palms, her bloodied arm pulsing as Hargrove's militia rappelled down, their rifles glinting in the harsh beam. The night, air alive with the chopper's roar and the crackle of flames licking up the building below. She'd barely caught her breath, the fire escape's rusted rungs still imprinted on her hands when she bolted, dodging a militiaman's lunge. His camo vest reeking of gasoline as he swung a fist she ducked under, her sneakers skidding on loose stones. The roof's edge loomed, a 30-foot drop to a dumpster her only shot, and she leaped, her stomach flipping as she crashed into rotting trash, the impact jarring her spine, her torn blazer snagging on jagged metal as she rolled. Out sprinting into the dark, her lungs screamed, smoke still clinging to her throat, but she pushed on. The chopper's light sweeping wide, missing her by inches as she darted across a potholed road, the gas station's neon glow a beacon half a mile off, her legs trembling, but refusing to quit. Hargrove's voice faded, the militia's shout swallowed by distance, and Aisha stumbled into a ditch, her grazed arm throbbing as she flagged a battered pickup truck, its headlights cutting through the haze, her voice hoarse as she begged, "Please, I need a ride, they're after me." The driver, a grizzled man in his 50s, his plaid shirt stained with motor oil, squinted at her through a cracked windshield, his gray beard twitching as he nodded. "Hop in, darlin'. Looks like you've had a hell of a night." Relief flooded her, his gruff kindness a lifeline as she climbed into the cab, the vinyl seat sticking to her sweaty skin, the truck rumbling to life as he pulled onto the road, tires humming against asphalt baked by the day's heat. She sank back, her breath steadying, the man's calm demeanor a balm after Hargrove's chaos, his radio playing faint country tunes as he asked, "Who's chasing you, kid?" She hesitated, then spilled a half-truth. "Cops, wrong place, wrong time." Her eyes on the rear view, expecting militia headlights any second. He chuckled. "Ain't that always the way?" And she let herself believe it. The gas station nearing, its fluorescent buzz a promise of a payphone, a call to Marcus, a way out. "Name's Roy," he said, tipping a faded cap, and she forced a smile. "Aisha," her guard dropping as the truck slowed, the station's lot empty save for a lone pump flickering in the dark. He seemed genuine, his calloused hands steady on the wheel, and she thought she'd found an ally, a stranger willing to defy the odds for her, her chest loosening as she reached for the door handle, ready to bolt for the phone. But then a click snapped her back, the lock slamming down, Roy's face hardening as he turned, his gray eyes cold. "Sorry, Aisha. Hargrove pays better." Her heart stopped, betrayal slicing through her like a blade, his kindness a mask peeled away to reveal a pawn in Hargrove's game, his radio cutting to static as he muttered into it. "Got her, boss. Heading your way." She lunged for the window, her fist smashing against glass that wouldn't budge, the truck lurching as Roy floored it, veering off the gas station road into a shadowed lane, her screams drowned by the engine's roar. "You're one of them," she shouted, kicking the dash, but Roy smirked. "Just business, darling, you're worth $1,000. His drawl now a taunt. The truck's cab a cage she'd walked into blind. She spotted a wrench on the floor, her fingers curling around it as he glanced ahead, and she swung, shattering the passenger window in a spray of shards, the night rushing in as she dove out, her body tumbling onto the highway, asphalt tearing, her knees as cars swerved, horns blaring in the 90-degree dark. She rolled, pain exploding in her ribs, but she staggered up, blood dripping from her palms, her blazer in tatters as she limped across lanes, headlights blinding her as she dodged a semi, its air horn a deafening wail. Roy's truck screeched to a halt, his door flying open as he cursed. But she didn't look back, weaving through traffic, her grazed arm a fire she ignored, the gas station still in sight, its neon a fading hope as she reached its lot, collapsing against a pump, her breath ragged. She fished quarters from her pocket, hands shaking as she dialed Marcus from the payphone, its receiver slick with her sweat. "It's me. Hargrove's got militia. I'm at a gas station off I-10. Help me." Marcus's voice crackled through, steady and urgent. "Hold tight, I'm sending security. We've got Hargrove's file. He's dirty. Stay put." She hung up, relief washing over her, the hum of traffic a shield as she sank to the curb, her knees bleeding through shredded pants, her mind clinging to Marcus's promise, believing rescue was minutes away, the betrayal a bump she'd survived. But then the cashier stepped out, a lanky kid with a buzz cut and a smirk, his apron stained with grease, phone pressed to his ear as he muttered, "Yeah, she's here, Hargrove. Hurry up." His eyes locking on hers with a glint of malice. Her stomach dropped, the quarters clattering to the ground as sirens wailed closer, red and blue lights flashing in the distance, another trap snapping shut. Roy's betrayal just the start. Hargrove's net tightening as the cashier's smirk widened, her sanctuary a snare she'd never seen coming. Aisha Coleman's knees bled onto the gas station's cracked curb, the cashier's smirk burning into her as he hung up the payphone, his grease-stained apron flapping in the hot night breeze, sirens swelling closer along I-10, their red and blue lights painting the lot in a frantic strobe as her heart thudded against her ribs. Marcus's promise of rescue now a distant echo drowned by betrayal's roar. She scrambled up, her torn blazer shedding threads, her grazed arm a pulsing ache as she bolted behind the station, ducking into a thicket of scrub brush, thorns snagging her pants as the cashier shouted, "She's running, Hargrove! East side!" Tires screeched, cop cars flooding the lot, their doors slamming as boots hit pavement, Hargrove's voice barking orders over a megaphone. "Fan out! She's a fugitive now!" Fugitive. The word clawed at her, a lie turned reality, and as she crouched low, peering through the brush, a chopper's spotlight swept overhead, its beam slicing the dark, pinning her shadow before she rolled deeper into cover, twigs snapping under her weight. Her phone long gone, her quarters spent. She pieced it together. Hargrove's militia wasn't just chasing her, they'd branded her, and a quick glance at a squad car's dashboard screen confirmed it. An alert flashing nationwide. Aisha Coleman, armed and dangerous, wanted for assault and smuggling. Her breath caught. The gas station's betrayal a spark igniting a wildfire. Hargrove's reach hacking into Horizon's system, planting fake records of her crimes, her senior VP title twisted into a rap sheet that'd bury her alive. She crawled through the brush, thorns drawing blood from her palms, emerging near a rundown motel 3 miles off, its neon vacancy sign buzzing like a lifeline, the night's 90-degree heat soaking her in sweat as she slipped inside, the clerk barely glancing up from his comic book as she paid cash for a room, her last 20 crumpled and damp. Room 12 smelled of mildew and stale smoke, the bed sagging under a threadbare quilt. But it was a bunker, a pause, and Aisha locked the door, peeling off her blazer to dye her hair with a cheap kit from the vending machine, jet black turning, muddy brown, her reflection in the chipped mirror a stranger staring back. She'd outrun the sirens, the chopper's hum fading, and she sank onto the mattress, her mind racing to expose Hargrove, to turn his frame up into her weapon, her bruised knees a testament to her grit as she plotted her next move. The motel's Wi-Fi was spotty, but she borrowed a burner phone from a maid, a soft-spoken woman named Carla who slipped it through the door with a nod, whispering, "Saw you on the news, honey. You don't look like no criminal." Her kindness a flicker of hope Aisha clung to. She texted Marcus, "Framed, nationwide alert, motel off I-10, need proof to flip this," and he replied fast, "Hargrove's file's a goldmine, sending team, stay low." Relief washed over her, Carla's back exit tip ringing in her ears, a narrow stairwell behind the ice machine her path to freedom. And she slipped out, the night swallowing her as she moved, her muddy hair a shield, her chest light with the belief she'd dodged the net. She reached the alley, the air thick with exhaust, her sneakers silent on cracked pavement. The motel's hum receding as she imagined Marcus's team closing in, Hargrove's lies unraveling under Horizon's weight. But then a loudspeaker shattered, the quiet, Hargrove's voice booming from a squad car rounding the corner. "We've got your sister Coleman. Come out or she pays." Her blood froze, a live feed crackling on a nearby patrol unit screen, Naya's face filling it, her 28-year-old sister bound and gagged in a dim room, her braids yanked back, eyes wide with terror as a militia thug pressed a knife to her throat, his camo vest patched with a swastika. Aisha's knees buckled, her gasp a knife in her own chest, Nia's muffled scream piercing the feed as Hargrove stepped into frame, his grin a grotesque mask. "Your move, VP." Clocks ticking. The screen blinked out, the alley spinning as cop lights flared closer, their engines a growl she couldn't outrun, her sanctuary shredded by Hargrove's cruelty, his frame-up now a hostage game she'd never anticipated. She'd thought the motel was her win, Carla's phone her lifeline, But Hargrove had hacked deeper, struck harder, turning her family into bait, his militia a hydra she couldn't slay alone. Her hands shook, the burner slipping in her sweaty grip as she texted Marcus, "They've got Nia. Escalate everything." But the reply lagged, the signal dropping as boots thudded near, the cashier's tip off a thread Hargrove had pulled, his net tightening with every breath she took. Aisha Coleman's knees trembled in the motel alley, the burner phone slick in her sweaty palm as Hargrove's loudspeaker echoed. Nia's terrified face seared into her mind from the live feed, her sister's braids yanked back, a militia thug's, knife glinting at her throat, the 90-degree night air a suffocating shroud as cop lights flared closer, their sirens a wail she couldn't outrun. Her muddy brown hair clung to her forehead, dyed to dodge Hargrove's hunt, but now it was useless, his voice booming, "Surrender, Coleman, or she's done." A threat that turned her legs to lead, her grazed arm throbbing as she dropped. The phone, its screen cracking on the pavement. Marcus's lagging reply lost in the signal's death. She'd thought the motel was her stronghold, Carla's kindness her shield. But Hargrove had Nia, her 28-year-old sister, her rock, now a pawn in his racist game, and Aisha knew she couldn't run. Not with Nia's life dangling by a thread. She stepped from the shadows, hands raised, her torn blazer a rag flapping in the breeze, her voice steady despite the quake in her chest. "Let her go, I'm here." As squad cars screeched to a halt, their doors flying open, Hargrove emerging. With a grin that twisted her gut, his hulking frame dwarfing the abandoned airstrip they'd dragged her to, its cracked tarmac stretching into the dark. The militia thug shoved Nia forward, her wrists bound with zip ties, tears streaking her face as she stumbled. Her floral dress torn at the hem, and Aisha's heart shattered, every step toward Hargrove, a surrender she hated, but couldn't avoid. He nodded, the thug cutting Nia's ties, letting her run to a pickup truck peeling out, her sobs fading into the night, and Aisha exhaled, thinking she'd saved her. Her sacrifice a bitter win as Hargrove's meaty hand clamped her shoulder, spinning her to face him. "Good choice, VP," he sneered, snapping cuffs on her wrists, the metal biting deeper than ever, his breath hot with tobacco as he gloated, "You're mine now, no more tricks." His triumph a venom she felt in her bones, his slurs a quiet mutter under his breath. "Think you're better than us, huh?" She spotted his crew, 6 militiamen in camo vests, their rifles slung low, bickering over a duffel bag's contents, cash spilling onto the tarmac, their greed a crack she could exploit. Hargrove shoved her toward a rusted hangar, its doors gaping, but she stumbled deliberately, her foot hooking the tattooed thug's ankle, sending him sprawling, his radio skidding free as she snatched it, her cuffed hands fumbling to hit the transmit button. "Horizon Security, this is Aisha Coleman. Hargrove's at the airstrip. Racist militia, they've got me," she shouted, the broadcast crackling live to her team's emergency line, a lifeline she prayed Marcus would catch. The militiamen freezing as her voice echoed, their argument halting mid-snarl. Hargrove roared, his fist swinging, the pistol whip cracking against her jaw, a burst of pain exploding stars in her vision as she hit the ground, blood pooling in her mouth, the radio tumbling from her grasp. "You'll pay for that," he growled, kicking her ribs, the blow stealing her breath. But she smiled through the agony, a defiant curve of her lips as the radio static buzzed, a faint, "Copy that," from Horizon's end cutting through help inbound, her gambit, a spark, in the dark. Hargrove loomed, his boot raised for another strike, but the militiamen shifted, their bickering resuming, one snapping, "She's troubled, Dale. Cut her loose." Their loyalty fraying as cash fluttered in the wind, and Aisha clung to that. Chaos, her jaw throbbing, her ribs afire she ignored, believing she'd turned the tide. But then a new shadow stretched across the tarmac, a towering man stepping from the hangar, his sheriff's star glinting under a wide-brimmed hat, his voice a gravelly drawl. "Enough, Hargrove. You've softened her up plenty." Sheriff Lyle. Kane, his frame broad and unyielding, clapped Hargrove's shoulder, his gray eyes locking on Aisha with a cold amusement. "Thanks for the warm-up, Dale. I'll take it from here." Her blood ran cold, the militiamen straightening, their greed forgotten as Kane's authority snapped them to heel. Hargrove's grin widening into something feral, her broadcast a flare that had drawn a bigger beast, her sacrifice for Nia a trapdoor to a deeper hell she'd never seen coming. Hey folks, can you feel Aisha's grit shining through this mess? Comment number 1 if you'd have risked it all for family like she did. Hit like if Hargrove's betrayals got you fuming, and subscribe to see how she fights this new monster. Picture yourself staring down Kane, cuffs, cutting, hope fading. What's your next play? Now with Sheriff Kane stepping in, what's his game and how's Aisha breaking free from this double cross? Aisha Coleman's jaw throbbed from Hargrove's pistol whip, blood pooling on the airstrip's cracked tarmac as Sheriff Lyle Kane towered over her, his wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow that swallowed the faint hangar lights, his sheriff's star, a dull gleam against his khaki uniform. Her cuffed wrists slick with sweat as the militiamen snapped to attention, their camo vests rustling in the 90-degree night. Hargrove stepped back, his hulking frame deferring to Kane with a nod, a smirk playing on his lips as he muttered, "She's all yours, boss." And Aisha's stomach twisted, the broadcast she'd sent to Horizon's security line now a distant echo, her ribs aching from the kick as Kane's gravelly voice rumbled, "Thanks for softening her up, Dale. Been waiting to meet this one." His gray eyes bored into her, cold and calculating, a predator sizing up prey. And she realized Hargrove was just the muscle, Kane the brain, a puppet master who'd orchestrated her nightmare from the shadows, his presence turning her sacrifice, for Nia, into a deeper abyss. He crouched, his knees creaking, his breath sour with coffee as he gripped her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Horizon's diversity, darling, huh? I don't like your kind pushing into my county." The racial venom in your kind hit like a slap, his hatred a wall she couldn't climb, and she understood. He despised Horizon's inclusive push, her VP role a symbol he'd vowed to crush, Hargrove's chase just the opening act. She spat blood, her voice hoarse but defiant. "You're a coward hiding behind badges." And Kane chuckled, a dry rasp that chilled her spine, standing to tower over her again as he waved Hargrove off. "Get the boys in line. We're moving. Her." The militiamen hauled her up, their grips bruising her arms, dragging her into the hangar where a rusted truck waited, its bed piled with chains. But Kane redirected them. "No, the cell. She's too slippery." They shoved her into a squad car, the door slamming as Kane climbed in front. His deputy, a wiry man with a scar across his brow, gunning the engine, the airstrip fading as they sped into the night, the horizon swallowed by scrubland under a moonless sky. They pulled into a crumbling jail 10 miles off, its brick facade peeling, bars rusted, a relic Kane ruled like a king. And Aisha's heart sank as they marched her inside, the air thick with damp rot, her sneakers squeaking on, warped linoleum as they locked her in a cell, its bars rigged with live wires, a faint hum warning her not to touch. Kane leaned close, his hat brushing the bars. "No food, no water, just you and the volts. Think about that broadcast while you rot." His smirk a promise of starvation as he tossed her Horizon ID onto the floor, stomping it with a crunch, her identity ground to dust. The cell door clanged shut, the deputy flipping a switch that dimmed the lights, leaving her in near darkness, the electrified bars glowing faintly. Her grazed arm a dull ache as she slumped against the back wall, her blazer in tatters, her ribs a fire she couldn't douse. She'd thought her radio play had sparked hope, that Marcus's team was closing in. But Kane's grip was iron, his power county-wide, and she realized he'd jammed her signal, twisted her broadcast into fake news on local channels. Her voice silenced before it could spread. She scanned the cell, her mind racing, spotting a frayed wire snaking from the bars to a rusty junction box, a flaw in Kane's cage, and she edged closer, her cuffed hands trembling as she pried at it with a shard of broken tile, her breath shallow to dodge the hum. Sweat beaded her brow, the heat suffocating, her jaw pulsing with every move. But she worked fast, shorting the circuit with a pop that plunged the cell into black, the bars buzz dying as she kicked the door. Its hinges groaning open, freedom a breath away. She slipped out, her sneakers silent on the linoleum, the jail's halls a maze of flickering bulbs and locked doors, her chest swelling with the belief she'd cracked Kane's game, her escape a middle finger to his empire. She reached an exit, the night air blasting her face as she stumbled into a parking lot, the stars above a fleeting promise, her legs pumping toward a ditch she'd hide in. Marcus's help surely en route now that she'd broken free. But then headlights flared, a dozen militia trucks roaring from the shadows, Kane's voice crackling over a bullhorn. "Nice try, Coleman." As men piled out, their rifles trained, a taser's prongs flying from the lead truck, slamming into her chest with a jolt that dropped her to her knees, her body seizing as electricity burned through her veins. She hit the gravel, gasping, Kane stepping from the cab, his boots crunching as he loomed. "Told you, Slippery, don't cut it." His deputy tasering her again, the world fading to black as her escape crumbled, his ambush a steel trap she'd never outrun, her fight snuffed out by a puppet master who'd played her every move. Aisha Coleman awoke to a throbbing skull, her body sprawled on a cold bench in a courthouse holding cell, the taser's sting still buzzing in her muscles, her torn blazer stiff with dried sweat and blood, the faint hum of electrified bars replaced by the murmur of a crowd beyond the walls. Sheriff Lyle Kane's ambush a blur as her grazed arm pulsed under a makeshift bandage she didn't remember tying. Her wrists ached in cuffs, the metal warm from her skin, her muddy brown hair plastered to her neck as she sat up, the cell's concrete icy against her palms, a narrow window showing dawn breaking over a dusty Texas town, the jail's parking lot now a memory swallowed by Kane's trap. The door clanged open, two deputies hauling her up, their grips bruising as they marched her down a hall reeking of mildew, her sneakers dragging on worn tile, her mind scrambling to piece together the hours since she'd blacked out. Kane's smug face the last thing she'd seen. They shoved her into a courtroom, its wood-paneled walls warped with age, pews packed with townsfolk, their eyes hard and accusing, a sea of white faces twisted with scorn as Kane stood at the bench, his sheriff's star glinting beside a judge. In a black robe, his cousin, Judge Harlan Kane, a wiry man with a hawkish nose and a smirk that matched Lyle's. The gavel cracked, silencing the room, and Harlan's voice boomed. Aisha Coleman, charged with assault, smuggling, and radical conspiracy, the lies piling up like bricks. Her Horizon VP role spun into a tale of subversion, Kane's bribed witnesses stepping forward, a gas station clerk claiming she'd pulled a gun, a militia, thugs swearing she'd smuggled drugs, their testimonies a chorus of fiction she couldn't mute. She shouted, "This is a sham, I'm innocent!" Her voice raw, cutting through the murmurs. But the crowd booed, their jeers a wall of hate, Kane's media machine having plastered her face on every local screen. Radical exec threatens order. Her broadcast twisted into a hoax, her fight, for Nia a footnote in their script. Harlan smirked. Order, defendant. As Kane leaned back, arms crossed, his gray eyes glinting with triumph. The courtroom a stage for her crucifixion, his power a noose tightening with every lie. She scanned the room, her ribs aching from Hargrove's kick, spotting a bailiff with a nervous twitch, a crack in their armor. But before she could speak, Harlan slammed the gavel again. Life sentence, no parole. The words, a hammer blow. The crowd erupting in cheers as deputies grabbed her, their hands rough as they dragged her toward a side door, her legs buckling under the weight of disbelief. She'd thought her escape from the jail cell was a spark, that Marcus's team would storm in. But Kane had rigged the game. His cousin's gavel a rubber stamp, the town his echo chamber, her title a target they'd painted red. As they pulled her through the hall, a familiar voice hissed, "Aisha, here!" And Marcus slipped from a shadowed alcove, his suit rumpled, eyes fierce, pressing a burner phone into her cuffed hands. "Evidence is out. Online now. Keep fighting." Before, a deputy shoved him back, his shout fading as they hustled her to a transport van. She clutched the phone, her pulse racing, hiding it in her waistband as the van rolled. The driver a militiaman with a buzz cut, his radio crackling with Kane's orders. "Lock her down tight." She waited, the van jolting over rutted roads, then dialed a Horizon tech she'd mentored, whispering, "Leak everything. Hargrove's file, Kane's ties. Now." Her voice a thread of steel as the signal held, the tech's on it, a lifeline she clung to. Hours later, locked in a new cell, its bars rusted but solid, she heard a distant roar. Townsfolk outside, their chants shifting from hate to confusion, her leaked evidence hitting X in local forums, screenshots of Hargrove's militia chats, Kane's payoffs, a tidal wave of outrage she'd ignited from the dark. She smiled, blood crusting her lip, thinking justice was clawing back, the public's fury a blade to cut her free. her ribs a dull ache as she leaned against the wall, believing Kane's house of cards was toppling. But then the ground shook, a deafening boom rattling the jail, dust raining from the ceiling as screams erupted outside, the cell's windows shattering inward, glass slicing her cheek as she ducked, her heart slamming against her chest. Smoke billowed, thick and acrid, the chants turning to wails, and Kane's voice crackled over a PA. "Her radical supporters bombed us, she's to blame." Her stomach dropped, the burner slipping from her fingers. The evidence she'd leaked a match he'd turned into a firestorm, the jail collapsing around her, bricks tumbling as his militia stormed in, their rifles raised, her victory a trap. He'd flipped into chaos, leaving her trapped in rubble she'd never meant to ignite. Aisha Coleman coughed through the choking dust, her body pinned under a slab of crumbled jail wall, the air thick with smoke and the coppery scent of blood, as Sheriff Lyle Kane's bomb tore through the cell block, her cheeks stinging from glass shards. Her grazed arms screaming as she clawed free, the burner phone lost in the rubble, her ribs a furnace of pain from Hargrove's old kick now reignited by the blast. The jail's skeleton groaned, rebar jutting like twisted bones, screams echoing from the yard where townsfolk fled, Kane's PA still crackling. Her supporters did this. A lie that turned her leaked evidence into a noose, her muddy brown, hair matted with soot as she staggered up, the 90-degree night a haze of chaos beyond the shattered window. She spotted a dead guard sprawled nearby, his uniform charred, a pistol glinting in his limp hand, and she lunged, prying it free, the metal warm and slick with his blood, her cuffed wrist shaking as she checked the clip. 6 rounds, a lifeline she gripped tight. Shouts rang out, Kane's militia storming the wreckage, their camo vests stark against the flames, rifles sweeping as they hunted survivors, their slurs cutting through the din. "Find that bitch, she's ours." Her pulse roared. The bomb, a trap to bury her, but she wasn't done. Her legs trembling as she ducked behind a toppled filing cabinet, its drawers spilling singed papers she ignored. She fired once, the shot cracking loud, dropping a militiaman with a buzz cut, his body crumpling as his rifle skidded free, and she bolted, weaving through the debris, her sneakers crunching glass as she rallied others, inmates in orange jumpsuits, mostly black and Latino, their eyes wide with fear but hardening as she shouted, "They framed us all, fight back." They nodded, grabbing pipes and bricks, a ragtag crew born from Kane's cruelty, their chains clanking as they followed her, a surge of defiance against the ashes. She led them out, the jail's gate blown wide, her pistol barking again, taking down a militia thug with a swastika tattoo, his scream lost in the fire's roar as they sprinted across scrubland, the town's lights flickering in the distance. Kane's mansion a hulking shadow on a hill she aimed for, her mind set on ending this. The inmates flanked her, a wiry man named Javier smashing a militia scout's knee with a rebar shard, a woman called Dee hurling a brick that cracked another's skull, their fury a mirror of hers, years of rigged arrests fueling their charge. They hit the mansion's gates, rusted iron creaking as Aisha shot the lock, the bullet sparking as it gave way, her crew storming the lawn, floodlights snapping on to reveal Kane's private army, 20 strong, their rifles raised. But she didn't flinch, her voice ablade, "Live stream it now." Javier snatched a fallen thug's phone, his fingers flying as he broadcast, Aisha shoving her pistol into Kane's chest as they cornered him on his porch, his wide-brimmed hat askew, his gray eyes wild with shock. "Confess," she hissed, the barrel steady, her blazer a tattered flag of her fight, and Kane stammered, "All right, I framed you. Hargrove too, it's all us." His words slurring into the stream, millions watching as Javier panned the scene, the inmates battered, faces proof of his reign. She saw sweat bead his brow, his hands raised, and he begged, "I'll fix it. New policies, anything." His plea a coward's croak, and Aisha's chest swelled, believing it was over, the stream a guillotine on his empire. Her crew's cheers, a roar as militiamen dropped their guns, hands up, the tide turning in her grip. She'd crawled from rubble, turned inmates into warriors, her pistol a scepter forcing Kane's truth, the mansion's marble steps slick with his defeat, her ribs a dull ache she ignored, thinking justice was hers, the town's hate drowned by the world's eyes. But then a crack split the air, a sniper's bullet ripping through her leg, blood spraying as she crumpled, the pistol skidding free, her scream swallowed by Kane's sudden grin, his begging a ruse as his private army surged back, boots pounding. From the mansion's wings, rifles blazing, a hidden ace he'd played. Javier's phone tumbling as the stream cut, her victory ash in her mouth. She clutched her thigh, the wound a gushing fire, Kane looming as his men swarmed, their slurs a chant. Finish her! Her crew scattering under gunfire, the mansion a fortress she'd stormed too soon, her fight from the ashes a spark he'd doused with blood, leaving her sprawled, betrayed by a shot she'd never seen coming. Aisha Coleman's blood pooled on Sheriff Lyle Kane's marble porch, her leg a blazing wreck from the sniper's bullet, her pistol lost in the chaos as his private army swarmed, their rifles spitting fire into the night. The mansion's floodlights, bleaching the scene stark white, her crew scattering like leaves in a storm. Javier's live stream cut dead, her muddy brown hair soaked with sweat and soot as she clutched her thigh, the 90-degree air thick with gunpowder and her fading. Hope. Kane loomed above, his wide-brimmed hat tilted back, gray eyes glinting with a predator's glee, his militia closing ranks, 20 boots stomping the lawn, their slurs a vicious hymn. End her now. As Dee's bricks sailed wide, Javier's rebar clattered useless, the inmates' defiance shredded by gunfire, her fight from the jail's ashes a fleeting blaze snuffed by Kane's hidden ace. She'd thought his confession was her win, the world's eyes her shield, but the sniper's shot flipped it all. Her leg gushing, ribs aching from Hargrove's old kick, her blazer a shredded testament to a war she couldn't finish. Kane's smirk a guillotine as he barked. Tie her up, we'll bury her quiet. Her vision swam, the pain a tide pulling her under, but she grit her teeth rolling sideways, her cuffed hands fumbling for the pistol she'd dropped, fingers brushing air as a militia thug kicked it away, his boot grazing her jaw. A fresh burst of agony she swallowed down. She was done, outnumbered, outgunned, her leg a dead weight, the mansion a fortress of hate she'd stormed too bold, Kane's army a wall she couldn't breach, their rifles trained as he stepped closer, his drawl, a taunt. No more tricks, Coleman, you're history. But then she remembered, Horizon's emergency beacons, a failsafe she'd installed in every exec's kit, her blazer's lining torn but the tiny device still sewn in, a panic button she'd forgotten in the chaos, her last card as she ripped it free, thumb jamming it hard, a silent pulse screaming her location to Horizon's grid. She tossed the gun she couldn't reach, a decoy clattering loud, the militia lunging for it as she rolled again, blood slicking the marble, her breath a rasp as Kane laughed. What's that, a toy? His arrogance a blind spot she'd banked on. Sirens wailed sudden and sharp, cutting the night, chopper blades thumping as floodlights swung from above. Not Kane's, but feds and state troopers, their vests marked FBI, Horizon Security. Logo flashing on a van screeching up the drive, Marcus at the helm, his voice booming. Stand down, Kane, you're done. The mansion shook, Kane's men freezing, rifles dipping as cops swarmed, their shouts a chaos of commands. Drop it, hands up, cuffs snapping on militia wrists, Kane's hat tumbling as he spun, his drawl a snarl. This is my county, but a fed tackled him, pinning his face to the dirt, his star grinding into the mud. Aisha's chest heaved, relief warring with pain as medics rushed her, tourniquets binding her leg, the crowd parting to reveal Nia, safe, her braids swaying. As she ran from a fed van, tears streaming as she knelt. You did it, sis. Her voice a lifeline pulling Aisha back. The press flooded in, cameras rolling. Kane's confession from the stream replayed on every screen, his empire crumbling live. Hargrove cuffed in a squad car, his hulking frame slumped. The town's hate drowned by a tide of justice she'd unleashed, her beacons a flare that had lit the dark. She limped free, leaning on Nia, hailed a hero, her leg a throbbing ruin but her spirit unbroken. The feds hauling Kane off, his snarl fading as choppers lifted. The night of victory she'd clawed from ash. But then a fed leaned close, his badge glinting, whispering, Kane's just the start, ma'am. There's a network, bigger. They're coming for you. His words a cold spike, her triumph a spark in a war she hadn't won. A shadow cabal of racists vowing revenge, their reach a ghost she'd fight forever. She froze, Nia's grip tightening, the crowd's cheers a hollow echo as a medic stitched her leg, her freedom a curse, her life now a hunted thing. The mansion's ruins a pyre for a battle just begun. Nia pressed a plane ticket into her hand, her voice trembling. "They're already here." Her eyes darting to the horizon, a shadow moving in the scrub. Kane's fall a domino, tipping a darker game. Aisha's fight a flame that had saved thousands but lit a target on her back. She'd never shake. Aisha Coleman's harrowing journey through systemic racism and relentless persecution offers profound lessons for us all. First, resilience is a weapon. Aisha faced arrest, betrayal, and gunfire, yet her spirit never broke, proving that inner strength can defy even the darkest odds. Her story shows how one person's courage can spark change, as her leaked evidence toppled Kane's empire, reminding us that speaking out, even from a jail cell, can shift the tide. Second, trust is a gamble. From Roy's double cross to the cashier's betrayal, Aisha learned the hard way that allies can turn, a caution to weigh every hand extended in crisis. Third, power hides in shadows. Kane's network lurking beyond his fall reveals that defeating one villain doesn't end the war, urging vigilance against unseen threats. Finally, sacrifice fuels justice. Aisha risked everything for Nia, showing that love can drive us to face the impossible, even when the cost is a life on the run. This tale isn't just about survival, it's a mirror to society's flaws, where racism twists systems meant to protect into tools of oppression. Aisha's fight teaches us to question authority, to dig deeper when the surface screams guilty, and to stand firm when the world turns against us. Her victory was bittersweet, a beacon of hope shadowed by a looming hunt, a call to keep pushing forward. So what's your takeaway? How would you fight if racism cornered you like it did Aisha? Drop a comment with number 1 if her grit inspires you. Hit like if this injustice fires you up, and subscribe to catch more tales of defiance. Share this with someone who needs to see courage in action. Thanks for joining Aisha's Ride. May you find strength to challenge wrong wherever you stand, and here's to a world where justice isn't a battle but a right.